Hello, and welcome to another segment of the Coatesville Area Public Library's Oral History Project. I'm your host, Kirk Witmer, and talking with me today is Ingrid Jones, a very active member of our community. Ingrid, we're glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, and I'm delighted to be here.
Ingrid, you're not a native Coatesvillian. You're what we refer to as a transplant. You first came in the early 60s. I think you came for a visit in 61.
That is
and
correct.
And then you came back again as a resident in 1963.
That's correct.
Tell us what your impressions were of Coatesville initially upon arriving here.
Actually, it was just a picture-perfect town.
How so?
The main street just nestled between the two hills. It was just like a little valley that you would see on a postcard. Then when I got to the other end of town and saw the big smokestacks and all the activity going on in the mill, I was quite impressed.
Mm-hmm.
It just looked like something from a storybook.
What do you recall of the availability of shopping about that time, the early 60s?
Not very much. There wasn't much to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a clothes buyer that much, but I do like to, when you see something, you just go and get it. But the people in Coatesville impressed me. Very warm, caring, friendly, just nice people. And that's what made me stay.
But now, Ingrid, I know that that is not your first memory of Coatesville. You have memories of Coatesville as a very small child on a train. Tell us about that.
Oh my. Every year, my brother and I would take a trip to Texas. And we would ride the train for maybe 3 days and 2 nights. Well, when you go in the daytime and you're coming from the North Philadelphia station to the main line and up through Downingtown and Coatesville, and it was nice until we got over the bridge. There's something about me and bridges. And the bridge, you just happen to look out and there's nothing there. And you're on this big stone bridge going across the creek and 82 and all these places. And it's just like you're flying.
Mm.
You know, there's nothing there. You know, all the beauty, all the niceness, you know, just everything just went away.
Mm-hmm.
It was frightening. But what could you do? But that was the first memory, so, but I prefer to keep the second memory when I was an adult.
I don't blame you. Ingrid, you've brought a picture with you today of a certain home in Rokeby Road, south of Coatesville. Tell us about the resident of that home.
That was my ex-husband's grandmother's home and grandfather. She was Ida Ruth Jones, known as the Grandma Moses of Chester County. She was a painter after 80 years old, and she's got beautiful oils, watercolors, just lovely paintings. She's what they call a primitive artist. They've given her posthumous art exhibits at the Kentmere Museum in Wilmington, the Chester County Historical Society, and a lot of others. I never met her, but I understand she was quite a charming lady. She would spend sometimes summers at the estate of Mrs. Walter Powell Townsend over around Cheney, and she would paint there. And a lot of people have her paintings. I have one in particular called Mock Orange, and it is a beauty. I got it. It was a gift to me from my ex-husband's maternal grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And each painting has a narrative on the back and her signature. So it's quite impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But that's her home. In fact, she painted her home on maybe a postcard size. I don't know whether it was cardboard or what, but it's nice, and it has a little horse and buggy going down the road, the pond across the street. It has, I guess, the grape arbor, different little things. And she gave that to my ex-husband when he was 8 years old on his birthday. And it has on the back, Grandpa Jones made the frame. So I thought it was quite nice.
Yes.
Mhm.
You have had a number of long-standing associations with various commissions in the area. I'm referring to the East Fallowfield Historic Commission and the East Fallowfield Planning Commission,
Yes.
as well as the Chester County Housing Authority. Can you tell us about some of the issues that these agencies have had to deal with over the years? And let's take them one at a time. Let's start with the Chester County Housing Authority.
Oh my, that was an endeavor of love.
Mhm.
I wish I'd been there longer to do more for the people. The residents need a lot of understanding and help. Of course, you don't get help all around. I left when Dr. Dinneman and Al Eastburn came on so that they could get help from the police.
Mhm.
We had not very much service or protection of the Oak Street Housing Project at that time. But when those two got on, things changed, made it a lot better.
Mhm.
So I'm concerned about health and safety and welfare in general.
The Oak Street Housing Project dates back, I believe, to 1970. And give us an idea of the climate, the attitudes of folks back in that day. I know that there was a definite need for a project of that nature to provide some housing. How do you recall attitudes at that time?
Well, it was a welcome change. A lot of people that I was familiar with didn't have running water or plumbing in their homes in that day. And this was a welcome change, you know, a brand new living space, lots of company, but, you know, 2 children to a room, if I may, living room, nice kitchen area, anything that, you know, somebody would want, and it was something new and different. So I'm not saying that what they had was not substantial, but it was good. But something new is always better.
Moving on to the East Fallowfield area. The historic commissions generally have a great deal of difficulty in maintaining history. There's always a segment of our community that wants to improve and revitalize, and oftentimes historic buildings are caught in the fray. And can you recall any incidents that fall into that category regarding history in East Fallowfield?
Well, there's quite a few, but the one that strikes me most is the Civil War soldiers' graveyard. One of our members had discovered it 2 years prior, and I got the job of tracing it down and finding out who the current owners were. It took me almost 2 years, and it was traced from Deary AME Church is what it was called. And then they moved to the corner of Westchester Road and Callan Road. That church burned down. And finally, it was traced to the Hutchison UAME Church in Coatesville. So it was an endeavor, but we found it. It's a lot of interesting history in that graveyard. Civil War soldiers, the graves have been robbed, most of them. People want the swords, the buttons, medals, and what have you. But there are the nice gravestones, the headstones remain, and some of them are quite elaborate. Some of the men were Masons, belonged, you know, they had the, say, 54th Massachusetts group, and some that trained in a place outside of Philadelphia called Lamont. So it's quite nice, if you can call a graveyard nice. Some of them that couldn't afford the stones, they have a common gravestone, a piece of shale to mark a spot. And then the, I guess the borders or the lines drawn around, say, the basement, not the basement, but, you know, where the church was. You can see the stone markers still on the ground. It's quite lovely if it's kept up.
Yes. I think it's probably important to note, too, I don't think we mentioned specifically that you discovered a Civil War soldiers' cemetery, but in the process, it was later discovered that it was a cemetery devoted to black soldiers.
That is correct. Of course, at that time, they weren't buried together.
Right.
You had to have your own. So thank God the church was there, and they had a place to finally rest.
Are there other projects that you can recall regarding history in East Fallowfield?
Oh my. We went over to the Orthodox Cemetery, which is in back of the Church of Christ. And it's a stone building. I think most of the Lukens family is buried there, and quite a few other people. But it's quite nice also, and it's well kept. But it's a piece of history, and anybody can go there at any time of day and look over the headstones. Some are just regular, and some are the big long pieces, like on a vault. But it's quite educational to look and see the names, how long they lived. And you think about what happened during their lifetime, when you look at the years, beginning and end. Yeah,
And
it's quite nice.
this is behind the church that's located where?
It's on Route 82. It's the old Quaker meeting house. And the Church in Christ, I guess, they bought it from them. And then the Quaker East Fallowfield Fallowfield Friends, I think is what they call it. They built another meeting house across from the general store. And that was owned by an old family, the Websters. Of course, now it's called Triple Fresh.
Yeah, I think I remember the Webster store. It's on the corner.
Right on the corner of 82 and Buck
82
Run
and
Road.
Buck Run.
Well, the church is just down the street a little bit, right at the bend in the road.
Oh, okay.
And they have their own graveyard as well as the Orthodox cemetery.
Tell me about your work with the Planning Commission.
Oh, boy. That was quite interesting. Of course, it's all volunteer, these commissions in each township. I served
I think
almost...
first, yes, we should establish when you served.
Almost 3 years. In 90, what was it? I can't remember now. It's been so long. But at any rate, it was almost 3 years. And I am the first person in the history of East Fallowfield Township not to be reappointed to the commission as a volunteer. I think I'm the only one also. So, but I understand that's politics.
Yes.
Nice name for it.
But tell us about those 3 years.
We saw development coming in. A lot of people didn't want it. They like things the way they are, but of course you have to allow for development. It was most interesting. You get the papers, the plans from the developer, what's going to be where, how the drainage is going to be, so much swale, so much living space, so much yard. It's just great. It's just great. The roads, I think, are still private. Now, in some, when they first started them, you'd have to come out to a certain point to get your mail. You'd get it out at the end, but now they have it, well, a little later on, where the mailboxes were closer to the homes. But there's a lot of development in East Fallowfield. It's just huge population-wise now.
Yes. We should probably mention, when you mentioned that the roads are still private, for those listening, that simply means that they have never been dedicated over to the township. Is that?
They have now.
They have now.
They
but
have
they were
now,
not
but
at the
at
time.
first, I don't think they got the proper, like, snow removal.
Exactly.
Or whatever else. Yeah.
Maintenance and new asphalt when they need it.
Yeah,
things
I
like
think they
that.
depended on a developer to do that, but by the time the development is done, the developer's probably in Florida or California somewhere. He's made his money and he's gone.
Ingrid, you have become quite a collector of Lucan steel memorabilia. We have a number of items that you've brought with you today. Tell us how you got started on that.
Well, you look at what's around you, and when you hear it's leaving, or there may be a possibility of some kind of merger or whatever, you know it's going to be valuable in a few years. Some pieces I had before I became a collector. Some things that were given to me, just nice glasses or what have you. But then when you hear, the winds of change coming, you see these plates, with Lukens on them, and you get them. They have a little 22 karat gold trim. You see glasses, you see, say, credit union, Lukens Credit Union Guild, all kinds of stuff. and you just keep it because it's going to be worth something. It's already nice, but it's going to be even nicer when it's worth more money.
You've also got a number of booklets and things of that nature pertaining to Lukens. As you look back over this memorabilia, are there things that you learned that came as a surprise to you?
Some.
Yes?
Yes.
For example?
How they come about doing these things. I think what impressed me most was that a woman was at the helm of the company. I'm a women's history buff, and I thought it was just great how she took over after the loss of her husband and just kept it going.
And that, of course, would be Rebecca Lukens.
Exactly. Exactly.
Any important events in her life that came as a surprise to you?
Oh, I guess that she had all those children. You know, when she married the doctor and they had all these children, and then on the death of her husband, you know, she had to just survive. And she kept the family together. But then the rift with the mother, you know, when the father passed and she got everything, I don't think that set too well. But I think her mother would probably have come to the reasoning that she's a go-getter, she can handle it, and she kept it going.
Among all the memorabilia that you've gathered over the years regarding Lukens, a gentleman's name came up, Donald Siver. Tell us how you knew Donald.
Oh, Don came to Coatesville when his sister got married. And he's a naval officer. Of course, he retired. And he's from Wisconsin originally. And he liked history, so did I. And actually, we were both Civil War buffs. And we would really have healthy discussions, debates, fights, anything you could think of. And he was quite impressed with Luken Steel because his grandfather had something to do with American Motors. He was some executive out in the Midwest. So, you know, they had something to do with steel for the cars and whatever. His thing was the industry itself. Mine is with the buildings, architecture, because you got steel beams in the buildings. And then the Navy building, I think that was in Westwood, that they had a contract with the United States Navy. Lukens did, and they built, I think, parts for the ships and big beams for the bridges, and it's just extremely interesting.
I brought up Don's name because he has a poem that he's provided. I don't know whether it's an original from him or whether he's borrowed it from somewhere else.
I don't know either.
But I think it bears reading into the record. It's entitled, "Which Am I?" I watched them tearing a building down. A gang of men in a busy town. With a heave-ho and a lusty yell, they swung a beam, and a side wall fell. I asked the foreman, "Are these men skilled as the men that you hired to build?" He gave a laugh and he said, "No, indeed. Just common labor is all I need. I can easily wreck in a day or two what builders have taken years to do." I thought to myself as I went on my way, which of these roles have I tried to play? Am I a builder who works with care, measuring life by a compass and a square? Am I shaping my deeds to a well-made plan and patiently doing the best I can? Or am I a wrecker who walks the town, content with the labor of tearing down? I think that makes an important comment
It says a lot.
on the need to preserve our history,
Exactly.
particularly here in Coatesville.
And we have beautiful buildings in Coatesville. If people would just take the time to look up. Just look up and see what you can see. Just gorgeous. Like the old Sears building,
Yes.
where they had the slaughterhouse on 3rd Avenue, where you see the big horse coming, you know, the face coming out. The old bank buildings and the churches, they're exquisite. And the one I love most is the post office.
Well, the post office used to be, I believe, an opera house at one time.
I don't know. The way I heard it, it was the same architect that designed the art museum in Philadelphia and the library. I understand his name was Julian Adel, and I understand that he designed the post office also. Of course, in Philadelphia, they thought the Museum of Art was going to be a white elephant. Look where it is today. It's
Yes.
known the world over.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, Ingrid, I certainly want to thank you for being with us today and agreeing to participate in our oral history project. You've brought a new perspective to some of the areas of discussion here relative to our community, and we thank you for that.
And I thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.